Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets fall for the fourth time this year against the Boston Celtics, putting up a valiant effort, although no Jayson Tatum or Jaylen Brown were needed in this one. In the midst of it all, one Ziaire Williams continues to make a strong case for his value going forward. We dive in, coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm Adam Arbrecht. There's no Doug Norrie. Night off for him. We thank you, as always, though, for making us your first listen of the day. We're 100% free on all those great platforms. And let you know, this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks run your game. And the Brooklyn Nets, they ran their game. And running their game involved running into the Boston Celtics, mentioned there at the top. That makes the season series sweep for Boston, 104-96 in this one. It did require them to come back from a bit of a deficit throughout this game. Nets had stretches where they led. Of course, as we say, too, don't have Cam Thomas for the Brooklyn Nets. I don't know if we say that's 1-to-1 with a Jayson Tatum or a Jaylen Brown. But, I mean, honestly, when you look at this on paper, as we'll talk about some of the key players, Ziaire Williams, Keon Johnson, want to talk about him a little bit more in depth because his name has come up here, especially over on YouTube when we talk about who are the players the Brooklyn Nets should want to bring back. Doug and I made our list in our last episode, didn't put him on it. Doesn't mean he shouldn't be a part of it. I think there's been obviously flaws exposed in his game, but he's been having a little bit of a good stretch here for himself as well. So when you look at a game like this, I was going to almost say, if you take away Jaylen Brown and you take away Jayson Tatum, what are we talking about in terms of talent level? Well, I mean, you're still talking about having Al Horford, Kristaps Porzingis back, a couple games, I think, coming off of his own injury, Drew Holiday, Derek White. It's not like, again, you look at the first five-man starting lineup here and you don't say, well, without those two players, Brooklyn Nets should have a real swinger's chance here. They've played them well all season long. And I'm going to get to this tanking thing. And, we always say certain segments of social media engage with Brooklyn Nets and with the organization and with this season in different ways. Pretty clear message I want to send to all of them. But in these four games this season, 104-96 tonight, they played them well back on 3-15, 115-113 game. They had the blowout loss, 139-114 going back in November. But then early November prior to that, overtime game, 108-104. And all these things, you go back, you look who was available, who wasn't. It really doesn't matter because at the end of the day, what we always talk about is the fact that the Brooklyn Nets, on paper, coming into this season, were not a roster that any team was going to fear. It was a roster that everyone was going to look on the schedule and say, here comes wins. So they played teams really gritty. You can watch now, as I was thinking about tonight, I listened to a bit of it with Capstraw and Ryan Rucco on the radio. Then I also caught some of it on NBA TV. You can catch different feeds, who's covering the broadcast. And we know that the locals or anyone who covers this team consistently is going to talk about, know about, and not be surprised by the level of grit and hustle, the grind out kind of basketball this team comes with every single night. But even others around the league that cover this team acknowledge that. And we know that it all goes back to Jordi Fernandez and what he's instilled into this roster over this season. Now, the fact that you end up losing the game, again, this won't matter 2 years from now when the Nets get a couple of draft classes in and into the third year of Jordi Fernandez. We won't be talking about it the same way. Might be because they go out and get superstars. Might be because they bring in young, high-end talent through the draft over the next couple of seasons, and their development will be looked at differently than when we talk about not only Cam Thomas, who's obviously going to miss the rest of this season, but when we talk about guys like a Trendon Watford, like a Keon Johnson, like a Ziaire Williams, right? Guys that had draft pedigree once upon a time, but didn't come to fruition. So we look at these guys as reclamation projects. That won't be the case. For whatever you think has gone well, right, wrong, indifferent in the Sean Marks, Joe Tsai era of Brooklyn Nets basketball, we'll start to see what the plan is. And again, we know the issues we all may have with it, but how they go about planning and building their future over the next couple of draft classes. And we'll have a different sentiment that'll go well beyond, well, they're a gritty team. They're a plucky team. They certainly grind you every single night for 48 minutes. Great. It's not going to matter if at the end of next season, regardless of expectations, we sit here and we talk about the Brooklyn Nets being a 23-46 team 79 games through the season. That's not going to be good enough, right? So expectations will shift. But on a night like this, late in the season, when we know so many other teams are throwing in the total tank towel, listen, the Nets are putting their roster out there. None of the 5 starters played over 30 minutes in this game. You have almost 20 minutes from 4 players coming off the bench, 20 minutes for Watford as well. So there's a lot of things to get to here. I mentioned a couple of key players that I want to talk about. Keon Johnson, not someone that we've gone maybe a layer deeper here over the last handful of weeks. His overall season looks a certain way, but much in the way we talked about our disappointment of not having Cam Thomas for the remainder of this year to see what he was capable of, to see the expansion of that facilitator game and maybe have it show up more consistently in the box score. We've lost that. But some guys can still make some hay for themselves here. So we'll get into Ziaire Williams, Keon Johnson, and then, of course, this tanking thing. And it's specifically related to Twitter. So I'm not calling out the YouTube, although there's guys that agree or disagree or believe they've messed it up, whatever the case may be. It's a little more back and forth, a little more mixed bag on YouTube. Twitter's living in its own cesspool. And I'm not judging it. I'm just saying you got to move on from it. So we'll also have that conversation here as we move along from another loss for the Brooklyn Nets, 104-96, falling to the Boston Celtics. And by the way, just to keep it, in perspective here, this marks now with that loss, they've lost 4 out of their last 5, and they also had that massive 7-game losing streak as well. So we're now talking about having lost 11 out of their last 13 games. So for all of the discussion, about what they should have, could have, would have done, I get it. They're losing a ton of basketball games down the stretch. We'll highlight that here as well as we continue coming up here in just one moment. First, got to tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks. Oh, you know that the regular season maybe is winding down, but basketball playoffs is just around the corner from heating up, and there's no better way to get in on the action with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's easy to use, available in over 30 states, and lets you mix and match projections across different sports. Quick and easy. Yeah, that's what it's about. Prize Picks makes it simple. You can set up your lineup in less than 60 seconds and stay engaged all game long. And yeah, let's go ahead and cross promote here with tacos. Taco Tuesday deals every Tuesday. Prize Picks discounts select players, projections up to 25%, giving even more value to your lineup. Download the app today or use promo code LOCKEDON and you'll get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code LOCKEDON for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, you got to run your game. And of course, when you're done there, why don't you go ahead and check out our other friends over at Hungry Root. When it comes to grocery shopping and meal planning, I have had the ongoing problem. It's simple. I just don't have the time. I go to work every day, and then I talk about Nets every day. And I don't have time to go to the grocery shopping. Life gets in the way, my friends, but I do want to be healthier, and I was constantly feeling stressed out not being able to achieve that. Go to the grocery store, buy things I didn't need, and then end up with time. No, not time. No time to actually cook. So everything changed when I discovered Hungry Root. Been a game changer for me. It's like having a personal shopper and nutritionist all in one to take care of all my grocery shopping, recommending meals and groceries based on my taste and health goals, from anti-inflammatory to high protein. And oh, baby, yours truly knows all about gluten-free stuff. So, and the best part there is every single meal is ready in 15 minutes or less. So you get all your meal planning, all your grocery shopping, all your healthy options, and getting your cooking done in a timely fashion. You're going to go ahead and love Hungry Root as much as I do. For a limited time, you can get 40% off your first box and a free item in every box for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA and use promo code LockedOnNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA, promo code LockedOnNBA to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA, promo code LockedOnNBA. Don't miss out. All right. As we continue the conversation here, talking about the Brooklyn Nets losing, this game to the Boston Celtics, 104-96. Down the stretch, by the way, we talked about this before, and this isn't nitpicking, this isn't busting chops here. It's just, the sequences unfold the way that they do. You get a couple of interesting shots made. You get some fouls, some of the careless turnovers there, right? Nets are trying to push. They get Cam Johnson knocks down a timely triple. You get Keon Johnson knocking down a timely triple. So they keep it within 2 possessions. for some small stretches there, ends up in foul shots, missed three-pointer towards the end there, turnover, jump ball scenario, all that jazz. One of the things, of course, as we all anticipated, though, is if you're looking over at this box score and you think about like, well, when did the worm turn inside of this game for the Brooklyn Nets? Well, it was obviously when Baylor Shireman came in, and in 16 minutes, he had 3 points in the first half, 17 points in the second half. He was 7 to 8 from the field, 6 to 7 from beyond the arc, right? And you saw these things down the late game sequences, not specifically with Baylor, but in general, as I was talking about at the top, other announcers, commentators, the league recognizing the intensity the Nets play with. They tried a lot of blitzing action, especially late, to try to keep this thing 2 possessions, maybe force a turnover. It took some chances. It led to a wide open lob to Porzingis. It led to an easy layup when they tried to blitz out near the foul line on a couple of passing sequences. It's going to happen here. But if you're going to be without Jaylen Brown and without Jayson Tatum, and you want to give yourself a chance, Porzingis goes for 25, Holiday goes for 12, 18 for Derek White. I say Holiday goes for 12. He kicks in the 8 assists and the 6 rebounds along with that. But you got to avoid something like this. If you want to win the game, you got to avoid having a 20-point scorer coming off the bench. Also had Pritchard, who kicked in 10 of his own, 3 of 7 from beyond the arc. Okay, great, grand, wonderful. Good for the Celtics. Let's talk about the Nets, though. So we mentioned this the other day. Ziaire Williams has been turning things around for himself, specifically when we talk about looking at the three-point shooting. It's the thing that Doug and I have banged the table about. If he can turn that around, if he can get that number up, then we can have a real conversation. And even though when you look in the month of March, he's actually only shooting 33% from beyond the arc, you can look at these last stretch of games and see 3 of 7 tonight, 43%. 4 of 7 the game prior against Boston, 57%. Go back 2 more. I mean, he went 1 for 2 against Chicago, but I'm not going to overhype that. It's 2 attempts. 4 of 9 against Cleveland. Now, he had the horrendous 1 of 8 against LA, but then right back, 4 of 9 against Charlotte, 2 of 5 against Golden State. So there's been really good ones. He started off the month terribly, going 1 for 11 across the Detroit and San Antonio matchups. But if he can go ahead, so we said this before, Cam Thomas and what we won't get to see from him. If Ziaire Williams can go ahead and show off, as by the way, in the month of February, he shot 37% from deep. So he already had that successful month. You want to say, is he cooling off? No, I just think he had some really bad games there to start the month. If he can continue this trend, we talked about this before. He's my guy. I know we said about Cam Thomas most likely to be brought back. It lives on a spectrum. But Ziaire Williams is easily the most versatile player that I think you can return from the group of guys, right? That you think about if we bring in a new point guard in the draft or in free agency, even if we bring back D'Angelo Russell, however you feel about him, you can see Ziaire fitting onto the court, having defensive versatility, having the offensive value, and he has enough other areas to his game that work and function on that end of the floor. We mentioned, we talked about previously Noah Clowney, right? 70% of his shots coming from beyond the arc. Like, it's worth noting these last couple of games, like he was 10 of 20 from the field in the last 2 games against Boston, 7 of 14 from beyond the arc, right? So you're still talking about 60, over 65% of his diet coming from beyond the arc. But in games prior, 7 field goal attempts, 2 from deep, right? And some of these games you can look and see it's a mixed bag about whether or not the balance for him. Does he need to get a little inside out work at times? Do you still want to see him getting towards the basket? Yeah, probably. Like, there's things inside of his stats going back to that Lakers win. Yeah, bad shooting night for him from beyond the arc, and he was only 2 of 10 from the field. So he only took 2 non-3-point shots that game, but had 9 rebounds, had 2 assists, had 2 blocks, had 2 steals, right? So there's other ways that he can impact the game, and I think it'll be really fun to watch as we get down the stretch here of this season. What do we get out of Ziaire Williams in terms of can carry forward, can still be valuable? Listen, a year from now, are we thinking about him the same way we've talked about Trendon Watford? Maybe, right? Some injuries for Watford this year. It's kind of been an up and down, in and out. Now he's back in the mix. He played 20 minutes tonight, 5 of 9 from the field, 0 of 2 from beyond the arc, had the 4 assists, right? Another guy that I think you'd still love to keep around here, but Ziaire is one of the first players that I'm pointing to and thinking about. And by the way, he was a -5 in plus minus tonight. Everybody else in the starting lineup was -10. So, for whatever it's worth, 20 minutes action for him. The other guy is Keon Johnson. And the reason why I want to bring him up is because, like, we've talked about the fact that the shot just hasn't been good enough for him, right? And if it's not going to come around, and it didn't seem like it was going to, it's just going to be really hard. Now, one of the things that plenty of you have pointed out, especially over on YouTube, and we've discussed it on the show over the course of the season, he's a pesky defensive player, right? That is something that he can hang his hat on. So if you think about him sticking with this team, well, he's got to do a little bit of what he's done the last 3 games. And that's be 3 of 6 tonight from beyond the arc, 4 of 9 the game prior, 5 of 9 the game before that, right? Again, another guy in the month of March, all of a sudden, after he shot under 30% in February, he turns it on and he's doing 30, almost 39% from deep this season. Now, that is directly related to these last 3 games in large part because he started off the month 2 for 9, 1 for 4, 2 for 3, 0 for 1, 3 for 4, 0 for 3, 0 for 2, right? You take away, without these 3 games, it does not look so good again for another month for him. But guess what? Every game counts. So, and unlike Ziaire, we're talking about that diet and Noah Clowney, for Keon Johnson, he took 12 shots tonight. Now he's 5 of 12 from the field, 3 of 6 from deep. He took 20 shots the game prior, 8 of 20, 4 of 9 from deep, 15 the game prior. Because of the role that he plays and because he has that attacking downhill mentality at the basket, he's going to get into the paint. The one thing that I would love to see from him, if we're talking about, hey, shots coming around, seeing the ball go through the hoop, all awesome stuff for him. One, you're seeing the fouls have ticked up over the last couple of games. They're both against Boston, so I'm not going to bust his chops there too much. Can he play under control, play with defensive intensity, and not pick up some of those fouls maybe? The other part of it would be free throws. Now, again, he's not going to be a guy. None of the Brooklyn Nets are going to be guys that are going to get a lot of foul calls. But if you're going to be a guard with his mentality, talk about Cam Johnson, right? Can contort his body, can get at the basket. We've made the case that sometimes Cam Thomas is so good at twisting and contorting his body, he ends up avoiding, not because he's shying away from it, but he doesn't get the contact, so he doesn't end up going to the line, right? So there are these compounding problems with his style of play. That's not Keon Johnson. Keon Johnson wants to go in and attack at the basket. He's not the biggest guy in the world, even though he's 6'5". He's still only $185, but he had 1 game this month going back against LA, 6 trips to the line. Outside of that, never more than 3, usually 2. And tonight did not go to the line once, didn't go to the line 3 other times in this month, right? So he only averages 2 attempts per game. And he's never averaged at any point this season more than 2.7. And that's going back to January, right? So, I mean, it's all these little things. But I obviously love what we're seeing from beyond the arc from him. And that's all that it really takes to move the needle. He's still only shooting 40% from the field. He shot 38 the month prior, 38 the month prior, 36 the month prior, right? So, it's a very small sample size, but this can be a very encouraging thing for him. If you're a Keon Johnson fan, if you believe in his first round, pedigree, this is how you get there. And he has some time here as the season winds down to try to show a little bit of something. And there's no reason not to bring him back as well. If you tell me Keon Johnson's on the bench for the Brooklyn Nets next season, yeah, right? What's the harm in that? It may not look the same. You may not see him playing 29 and 31 and 25 minutes a night. That's okay. There might be the world where Keon Johnson in 15 to 17 minutes a night is a better, more effective version of Keon Johnson, especially if you think about it from the defensive value first, and then hopefully being able to drive some action there on the offensive end. So another guy that I've enjoyed seeing these last few games and will continue to keep an eye on as we look down the stretch of this season. There's not a lot of guys that can dramatically shift or change what their outlook is going to be when this season ends. Ziaire Williams is one of them. He's trying to do it. Keon Johnson would be another. I don't know if he can move the needle the same way that we talk about Ziaire down the stretch of the year here, but I wouldn't hate it if he did, right? He's a 10, 3.8, let's call it 4. He's a 10, 4, and 2 guy, right? Shooting under 38% for the season. So you'd have to make a case for me that Keon Johnson can put together 36, 35 to 37% from beyond the arc the rest of the way, including this month of March, rest of the season. Can you put together that type of number from deep? He averages 32 right now. So can you move the needle? And by the way, for whatever it's worth, This season, the most he's ever played in the NBA, most consistent minutes he's ever had, 66 games, 43 starts, 24 minutes. The field goal percentage is basically on par the last 3 seasons. The three-point shooting is at an all-time low going back to 15 games played in his rookie year. So the 30.4%, got to move the needle on it. Career 32% three-point shooter. Only way that he's getting off the pine with consistency if he can change that. Rebounding numbers are positive here. Big jump in minutes, obviously, but averaging 4 rebounds, good out of a guard position. We'll see. Well, oh, by the way, real quick here too, turnovers, big increase in minutes, has not changed a lot. 1.3 turnovers per game. So good ratio there as well for Keon Johnson. We'll continue to keep an eye on that. On the other side, the message to everybody that keeps complaining about what the Nets have done, Sean Marks, and why hasn't he just done the tank? You got to give it up. Because guess what? The Nets lost again. While you were whining and complaining that D'Angelo Russell plays too much and they should have traded Cam Johnson. Cut 2. Nets lost another game. I get it. They're not going to be in the number 1 spot when it comes to the odds, but they're going to be right there in the mix, just like you want them to be. We got to, come on. We'll come back on the other side. We'll break that all down. Everybody take a deep breath. I need to take a deep breath. We'll do it here coming up in just one moment. Before we do that, though, gotta tell you, friends, about our friends over at Robinhood. Oh, my goodness. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%. Plus, you also get 4% APY on your cash in non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on an annual IRA contribution, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate. Claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, my friends, you heard it there. Check it out. Bracket coverage. We know it. Locked On, doing their thing. March Madness, heating up. We know that everyone's going to be going nuts for that, and maybe keeping an eye on some guys that could be available for the Brooklyn Nets when we talk about the upcoming draft. But last but not least, we got to get we got to get over it. Doug's talked about it before. We've talked about it before. Everybody understands that when we talk about tanking and we talk about being in the best position, when we talk about making the moves the Nets have made to get pick control of their own back and to be able to have this moment, right? We all sit here and say, if you want to have the number 1 overall pick, the best way to do that is to have one of the 3 worst records in the league and have a 52.1% chance at a top 4 pick and a 14% chance at the number 1 overall pick. Awesome. The Nets are 5th. So they have a 42.1% chance at top 4, and they have a 10.5% chance at the number 1 overall pick. I get, like we know, the Phoenix picks and moving things in Houston, everything else. We talked about this when they did all of it, and we applauded the Brooklyn Nets for making the decision, for doing what was necessary to regain control so that you could write your own future. And yes, the Brooklyn Nets, through the first 19 games of this season when they went 9-10, through other stretches where they went on winning streaks, have completely derailed. And I take that back. They've not completely derailed. They have marginally derailed their chances to have the number 1 overall pick. I will not debate what the numbers are because there's no debating the stats. Your best chance, 1 through 3, right? Fourth, New Orleans, 48.1 for a top 4, 12.5% at the number one overall pick. But the Nets have not decimated their chances at the number 1 pick. They have hurt them. The Brooklyn Nets are not 11th in the tank odds right now. They are not Portland with a 9.4% chance at a top 4 pick and a 2% chance at the number 1 overall pick. They have 42.1 for top 4, 10.5% chance for the number 1 overall pick. And no, they're not going to catch New Orleans between now and the end of the season, right? Philadelphia is right there. So we may turn around and have a difficult conversation. Toronto is 24-45, right? They've lost 2 in a row now after going on that stretch in their schedule where I pointed out they're going to play some bad teams. There's going to be some wins there for them. They're right there. So don't get me wrong. The tone of this will feel different if 5, 6, 7 games from now, if 2 games from now, Brooklyn finds themselves in the 7th spot and they're 31.9% for a top 4, and they're at a 7.5% chance for the number 1 overall pick. By the way, it is still marginal. We're talking about margins here. So it does matter for me personally. Some people agree, some people don't. How far do you slide in this? Does it matter that you could have taken pennies on the dollar for Dorian Finney-Smith in the offseason and not had him here early? Does it matter that you maybe could have made a decision to trade Cam Johnson? Yes, obviously it does. Getting back D'Angelo Russell? Of course it does. But if you liked what you've seen from Ziaire Williams over this recent stretch, if you like what Cam Johnson represents as a veteran value, that as you build your roster out over the next couple of seasons, he will always be a good fit. He'll always be a great compliment, and he'll always be a valuable asset. If you like what you've seen in terms of some of the young player development, you have to accept that that's a byproduct of some of these other things. If the Brooklyn Nets had gotten rid of Dennis Schroeder early in the season and then made the deal with the Lakers and didn't get D'Lo back, I would not have been sitting here telling you, why didn't you get D'Angelo Russell? You got to want to get D'Angelo Russell. Of course not. We, at the time, would have been talking about, like, I don't know, so Ben Simmons is your point forward, and he can't shoot the ball a lick, and he's going to be dishing this thing around. Like, we've seen that version of this team. And I always think that, first, we look and acknowledge that, yes, they've damaged their chances at the number 1 overall pick. They haven't put them on total life support. They haven't totally dumpstered them. We'll see where they end up at the end of the year. That's one conversation. But it's easier to talk about that now than it is to talk about what it looks like on a night in, night out basis when the clunky disjointedness sometimes of the offense makes you wonder if anybody has value on this roster going forward, right? Cam Johnson's had a great year. I check his numbers here about if they've continued to dip a little bit for him. We know the 3-point shooting has come down to earth in a big way for him over the last month or so. But his 3-point shooting and being open is somewhat, independent of quality of play or how possessions look. That's the type of shooter he is. It's what his game is predicated on, right? So when you go and look, though, and you see now that over this last stretch of games and over the month of March, he's up to 36%. He was 36% last month, 37% the month prior. Like, this thing is slowly tapered off from him as the year has progressed. That's not surprising, but he's also played 29 minutes against Boston, 36, 35, 35 against Chicago, right? He's playing big minutes down the stretch of the season. And I get it. You can sit here and complain about that and what it's going to do to you. They lost every single one of these games except for 2 in the month of March with Cam Johnson playing big minutes. If you like how Keon Johnson has looked, if you like how Ziaire Williams has looked, if you like that Day'Ron Sharpe looked really impressive for some games here, even though it went right back to old form, that's because D'Angelo Russell was there. Their connection is what got you excited about what Day'Ron Sharpe could be for this team going forward and why some fans want him to be brought back this offseason for sure. The rebounding, maybe the expansion of his shot a little bit on the offensive end, all that stuff. So it's always easier to complain about the thing that's happening right now and forget about what the other version of it could have looked like. And all that's to say, it's going to be what it's going to be. Like, the Brooklyn Nets are going to win or lose the rest of their games. And the Philadelphia 76ers and the Toronto Raptors and the Pelicans, like, everybody's going to do what they're going to do. And I'm not arguing what the best path is to lose as many games as possible, because that's the system that's in place. But it's going to be what it's going to be. So ranting and raving about Sean Marks needs to be fired, even though you just praised him for the execution of certain things, but because, understandably, there wasn't the follow-through maybe that you thought there should have been around the tanking agenda, now all of a sudden it's right back to him being the worst GM in the history of GMs. Maybe he is. We've done this before. His ledger is filled. And the misses and mistakes are large and looming, but the successes are really impressive too. And maybe that's just the volatile nature of the last handful of seasons have been for Brooklyn. What the premise is, it's always been a pretty violent journey. Fan base has got to take it. So I hope you're taking it with me. We'll be back tomorrow night, Doug Norrie and myself. Well, or whatever, Thursday morning, whenever you see this, depending on when you're listening. But in the meantime, the Nets, after going through these rough games here, don't forget, they still have now coming up in terms of that tank agenda. They're getting the Pacers back-to-back here. They're a few games away from seeing Toronto. If they want to control that portion of their destiny, they play Toronto 2 times before this season is over. So plenty of things for the Nets to take care of their own accord. In the meantime, though, you get over to social media. You follow me at Adam Armbrecht, at Doug Norrie, at Locked On Nets. You get over to YouTube. We told you this policy time and again. You go over, you subscribe, you go over to your mom's house, go over to your dad's house, go over to your brother's house, your sisters, your friends. You say, give me your phone. Give me your phone. Get away from me. And then you go ahead and you create an account on YouTube. If they don't have one, you log in and you subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, right? That's the journey that we're on, man. We're going to be having a lot of fun. And as a reminder, as the season winds down, we'll start to turn our attention to the draft, to the order, to the prospects, and we'll highlight some of those as March Madness is underway and some of those big performances, not only from guys at the top of the draft, but all throughout the first round. And remember, second-round pick for Brooklyn as well. Certainly conversations to be had there. In the meantime, though, until the next time, when there is no Doug Norrie, there is no quote, short of saying that I miss my friend and I can't wait until he's back so we can keep talking all things Brooklyn Nets basketball.